Welcome to Longship Gaming. Today we are having a look at 2022 for Marvel Champions. The releases for the year, and it's been a very good year, and culminating in the release of the Mutant Genesis cycle, and what I believe to be the best cards of this past year. We'll be right back. Oh, fuck. 2022 saw the release of 14 new heroes, either on individual packs or within the big box expansions. So in January, we had Valkyrie and Vision, which rounded off the, well, I gotta say, lackluster Mad Titan Shadow cycle from 2021. Probably the last of the Avengers that we're going to see for a long time. I think Vision's an okay hero, but Valkyrie has really fallen flat for me. I know she may perform much better in multiplayer, but as a solo expo player, she really hasn't seen much time. Trying to make her work, she just doesn't work for me. Then in April, we got Sinister Motives, the long-awaited Web Warriors cycle, which brought with it, surprisingly, champions and a real boost for S.H.I.E.L.D. So this middle tier here, so Ghost Spider and Spider-Man in Sinister Motives, and then Nova, Ironheart, Spider-Ham, and Spider Suit, all very solid, actually fairly potent heroes in this tier here. So July, of course, through May and July, that was the cycle for the Web Warriors, Champions, and a little bit of S.H.I.E.L.D. September, the Mutant Genesis X-Men era began with Mutant Genesis, and for once they released Shadowcat, Colossus in the main box set, and then Phoenix and Cyclops as separate packs, so you could ideally play multiplayer with all four characters, have a full roster across 4 aspects. I think that was probably the smartest thing they could do, and I hope they continue to do that in 2023, but we'll see. And then, of course, at the tail end of that, Wolverine and Storm were the next set. Of course, next year we're waiting on Gambit and Rogue to close out this X-Men cycle, but that's a lot of X-Men characters in one cycle. It's going to be 8. So you didn't really get that with Web Warriors. You got 4 Web Warriors and 2 Champions in that last one. So maybe the number of X-Men will start to rival the number of Avengers, which, as I said, I don't think we're going to see very many of them. But if I were to place these in a tier in terms of power, this middle set here, very significant power-wise. And I think overall the villains, the scenarios that came in the Sinister Motives one were pretty varied. Were about middle weight in terms of their difficulty. I think this has probably been the most successful release in the past year. I'm enjoying X-Men, but I'm not really. I think they're still missing some kind of some essential cards, which we'll hopefully get in Gambit and Rogue. But if that closes out the cycle, I think still, Champions and Web Warriors are still going to be that sort of significant archetype for play. But yeah, very great year. Hopefully they can match this next year. I think 14 is enough. I don't really want to see that, see more than that. Just want to be able to spend time with each individual hero to play them. So again, especially if you're just getting into this game, 2022 was probably the best year for hero releases. There's a little bit of everything for everybody in here. And it only got better throughout the year. I think thematically, X-Men are fantastic. But again, I will reiterate, this middle section added so much to the game. And we'll get to that in a minute when we cover the best of 2022. Be right back. So for each of these categories, we're going to have a runner-up and a best in class. So we're starting off with best archetype for 2022. So the runner-up was a bit of a surprise coming out of the Sinister Motives cycle, and it was the number of S.H.I.E.L.D. support cards that have come into the game. So S.H.I.E.L.D. itself as a block, especially within Justice, are very formidable now, and it's largely on the back, I feel, of 3 cards, although there are lots of supplementary cards that add to its power. I think that anything that utilizes and gives a boost to things like the Helicarrier, to Nick Fury and Mockingbird, very, very commonly played to this day starting box basic cards, falls within this sort of shield umbrella. So the ones I wanted to call out here first, now mind you, Surveillance Team is an older card, but given a lot of new life by Monica Chang. So, relatively inexpensive shield agent. After she enters play, search your deck, hand, and discard pile for a copy of Surveillance Team support and put it into play. Place 1 Snoop counter on each Surveillance Team you control. So for a cost of 3, you're getting a 2-cost card and 4 counters for Snoops. And then, of course, you can have multiple of these out. Becomes very easy to manage threat. And very thematic, I think, with Shield overall. And then you have Agent 13, which is a very potent card in and of herself. So, thwarted to attack of 1, 4 health, so you can get a lot of use out of her. After Agent 13 attacks or thwarts, and let's face it, she's going to be thwarting, choose a shield support, ready that support. So, of course, what does that work with? Surveillance Team. What she works with very well is with Captain Marvel as well, because of Alpha Flight Station, which is also a shield card. So, Shield really kind of snuck out of nowhere and got a whole bunch of new support cards that makes a sort of like a package within Justice very, very viable and very strong. Almost transferable between a lot of decks, but can be leveraged by some that have that sort of shield connection, like Warp Machine. But enough about that. For our winning archetype of 2022 is Champions. So it was a bit of a surprise when there were so many champion cards that came out in that Web Warrior cycle. Web Warriors themselves are pretty potent, and I was going to include them in this perhaps as one of the better archetypes, but I think I'm going to save that as contributing to another category down the road. But we had 3 extremely strong champions: Ironheart, Nova, and Spider-Man, each with different types of play. But very, very, very potent cards, all of it, and especially the number of allies that came along with it. Vivian is a go-to in a lot of decks now to blank those pesky cards out there that you don't like. Moon Girl is an auto-include in Champions decks, because you can only play her as a champion, or a genius, which actually works pretty well for somebody to say like Tony Stark for Iron Man. Breathes a little new life into there as well. After you play Moon Girl from your hand, draw 1 card for each genius resource you used to pay for. Pays for herself. She's basically as good as White Tiger, if not better in a way. No, I shouldn't say if not better. I mean, White Tiger's pretty good in that if she enters play. This one you have to play from hand. So there's some limitations. But Moon Girl is a fantastic all-around ally. But what really makes Champions, in my opinion, well, Ingenuity is an interesting case because it's part of that cycle and it works really well with Ironheart. But it's a combination of Champions Mobile Bunker. Choose an identity with champion. The player who controls the identity may draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand. So the filtering is amazing. And go for Champions. Probably the most busted card in the game. Being able to get away with doing whatever you want for an entire turn. You can only have 1 per deck, but when the turn goes off when you need it, your champions are completely immune from damage until the end of the round. They can attack and thwart. The allies can attack and thwart to their heart's content, and you don't have to worry about taking any damage. And I should point out, it can be recurred by, since it's an event, I believe it can be recurred by Ms. Marvel. So, very, very potent, very potentially broken combination. But one that you don't want to necessarily lean on too hard. Don't build a deck around it. So there you go. For best archetype for 2022 is Champions. Next category for our best of 2022 is Most Improved Hero. So our runner-up for this is going to be Captain Marvel. The shield package slots very well in with her, as we mentioned in our previous category. Alpha Flight Station is a shield location, so her card draw can be amazing on her turns, especially with Agent 13 out. But I think what really boosted her even more for, again, more card draw is within leadership. I mean, after all, she is an Avenger. Attached to a friendly character, max 1 per character. Exhaust this card and deal 1 damage to attached character. Generate a wild card resource. Clarity of purpose. I mean, her picture is on it. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't put clarity of purpose onto any character who's running leadership. But for her, it's amazing because then she can spend an energy resource, heal the damage, and draw a card. So her hand size becomes ridiculous. She has become extremely potent in this past year. But I believe most improved hero overall is Thor. So Thor has benefited from a card that was printed late last year, Ever Vigilant. I mean, he's going to have aerial because he's going to have the hammer. Hero action, ready your hero and remove 2 threat from the main scheme, which is something that Thor, with his 1 thwart, has always struggled against. He is very viable in protection now, and we'll get to the various aspects later on. But the printing of Limitless Stamina, which allows for and this targets specifically heroes that have 14 hit points or greater, to be able to ready your hero as an action, or Unshakable to give steady, which is really good. For any hero. These were obviously printed in the intention to work with Hulk and Thor. It works a lot better with Thor. You don't want to ever be in a position where you're never not ready. But there are so many cards now available to Thor that he is always going to be ready to smash some minions, get the job done, either in aggression or protection. He is very solid now. I do want to run more of him against some of the more difficult villains, because I think he really does have a lot of potential in the game now. So there we have it, Thor, most improved hero for 2022. Our most innovative hero design for 2022. Well, there is no runner-up for this. There is only one character, or one hero for this, and that is the Spider Suit and Penny Parker. So I got to admit, when this hero first came out, I did not play her correctly. I was completely confused about how to use her. I mean, she is 2 cards, but it's thematically, it's very, very, it makes a lot of sense. She's the pilot of the mech. The innovative aspect of her comes from the number of interface upgrades that she has. And the fact that when she's in her pilot form, she is also in interface. Although it is, it's sort of think of Spider Suit and Penny Parker as a ramp deck from something like Magic. The more of your interfaces you have out, because I mean, honestly, it looks awful when you have a hand size of 4 or a hand size of 3. That feels really bad, but it's amazing how much work that you can get out of the interfaces. Exhaust interface to upgrade your control, generate that upgrades resource. Return to base, forced interrupt. When you flip to the side, flip Spider to Penny Parker, detach Penny Parker from here, moving all counters. So she's remarkable. Oh, it also helps that her alter ego action, when she flips over, she can just draw cards as part of maintenance. So by exhausting the suit, she is, I think, probably the most unique design, and there's been a lot of interesting design changes, but she really doesn't fit into the other categories of heroes that have counters placed on them, that change form. I mean, those are sort of the main archetypes, or sort of like Voltron in a way. I guess you could call her sort of like a Voltron. But the way the interfaces work for her, very unique and a real welcome change. She's a real powerhouse, and she really surprised me, since she's not really that well known of a character. And it helps that she fits into Web Warrior. Web Warrior is such a potent archetype that get a lot of mileage out of all the Web Warrior cards that came out this year. So there we have it. most innovative hero for 2022, Penny Parker, Spider Suit. For our most improved aspect for 2022, our runner-up for that is Justice. Now, when I pull these up, you're going to be confused. Why? I mean, these are the same cards I mentioned earlier. Why do we have Agent 13 in here? Well, I'm finding as the game ages, that the basic cards become much more important and do have a sort of natural connection to one aspect, generally. And this is a case where Agent 13 plays extremely well with Justice because, well, Justice is where S.H.I.E.L.D. seems to find its primary home. The S.H.I.E.L.D. block alone boosted Justice. Justice has always been good. But now you have a sort of ability to do passive thwarting, again, with Monica Chang and surveillance teams that you weren't really able to do before. You can get so much mileage just having cards set up, upgrades and supports that just kind of work passively in the background, thin your deck effectively to allow your hero to do the punching that they're supposed to be doing. So for a runner-up, we've got Justice with, of course, as I said, support from some basic cards. For our most improved aspect for 2022, however, it's got to go to Justice. And again, you're going to see a whole bunch of non-Justice cards in here. We'll get to those in a minute. Justice now can play very differently from the way that it used to. It used to play mostly just denying damage. You can still play it that way, but there's been a real boost this year in expanding, in my opinion, protection's role. And you can configure it in 3 different ways. So you can stick to it with damage reduction. So you have things like Force Field Generator, which is amazing. I mean, it's 6 extra hit points for 3, and it's going to work very well with another card I'm going to show in a minute. Boosting that sort of technical ability to just prevent damage, which is fantastic. Thwip Thwip within Web Warriors, deal 1 damage. Of course, this is specific to Web Warriors, but deal 1 damage to a Web Warrior character you control, place a total of 2 stun status cards on up to 2 enemies. So that can get around steady. It's very potent. It costs 2. I'd rather spread that status around, and you need, of course, a Web Warrior to do it. And I'll get to those in a minute. But you have more of a control aspect. So broadly, you've got this sort of preventing damage as your core or stunning or stopping attacks, which is sort of core to protection. But then you've got, on top of that, you can pair tech cards with repurpose. So repurpose allows you to basically discard a tech upgrade you control, ready your hero, and shoot thwart attack or def until the end of the round. Your hero gets plus X to the chosen power, where X is equal to that upgrade's printing cost. So not only does it ready, it gives you a boost. So let's say you're down to the last counter on Force Field Generator. Repurpose gives you that +3. Extremely powerful burst ability. So that also connects then to another aspect, which is the Always Be Ready, which works with something like Ever Vigilant. Now, mind you, that's for aerial only, but the ability to just keep standing up over and over and over again to do as much as you can during your turn is very potent. And then lastly, you've got the fantastic block of Web Warrior cards. And this is why we have our basic cards in here too. The best Spider-Man non-basic or Web Warrior non-basic protection cards are, well, the allies are in protection. And they work very, very well, of course, with the rest of the cards that are basic. I mean, you are sort of locked in, but you can actually play these Web Warrior cards like an ally-heavy, Web Warrior ally-heavy deck across pretty much any hero. You just have to watch your timing when it comes to somebody actually being a Web Warrior. But let's say that anybody can play Web of Life and Destiny. It won't be free, but that means that you have a Web Warrior card in play, and then you can play those other Web Warriors that all are restricted because you don't have any Web Warriors in play. It plays very much like your typical leadership deck where you have your mainstays in leadership, but now you have access, almost every hero has effective access to a whole suite of really potent protection and now, of course, basic cards. They have to live together. So I'm counting a lot of these basic cards as protection. But I think just for being able to play protection in 3 different ways across almost every hero in the game, huge improvement over what it used to be. Actually, it's moved up in terms of what I prefer to play. I played a lot of protection decks this year and had, well, success with them, but they need to be tuned a little more. And I don't want to say that protection is solved. I just think that it's really been given a boost in 2022. For our best individual card of 2022, our runner-up is Repurpose. I can't say enough good things about this card. It opened up an entirely new style of play for heroes that are technically based. Iron Man, Ironheart, Spider, all really love this card. Hero action, it's a 0-cost event. Discard a tech upgrade you control, ready your hero, and choose thwart, attack, or defense. Until the end of the round, your hero gets plus X to the chosen power, where X is equal to that upgrade's printed cost. So you're nearing the end game. You need to do that last huge push of damage. You need to ready your hero. You've got all of your interfaces out, or you've got all of your tech cards for Iron Man. Well, now you can just go nuts. So let's say for Iron Man, you've used your blasters, you've used everything you needed to do, you've done all the thwarting you can possibly do, and you can see the end goal is in sight. It's a 0-cost event, so you can do it multiple times. It's a great visual, in my opinion, of a tech-based hero just shedding off or burning or hurling chunks of their equipment or armor off just to get that extra boost, like a +3. And that's the amazing thing is until the end of the round. So if you had multiple repurposes, you're going it stacks. So unless you have 2, 3 cost pieces of tech. Usually you only have one that's a 3 that's really big, but my goodness, being able to do this multiple times in a round is significant damage that you can pump out, especially if those pieces of tech are ones that you exhaust to do damage. I can't say enough good things about this card. It has been a real mainstay of protection, especially for tech heroes or ones that rely on tech. Just amazing stuff. But I think that our top card of 2022, without question, is Clarity of Purpose. Its only downside is that it's restricted to leadership, but attached to a friendly character, max 1 per character. Exhaust this card and deal 1 damage to the attached character. Generate a wild card resource. It is unbelievable for anybody in leadership, especially. It is so incredibly potent. I will quite happily choose 1 damage to gain a resource every turn. Like when I brought it up with Captain Marvel, again, she's on the picture here, her station's in the background. It's like it was made for her. Well, it's also made for other heroes like Spider-Ham. It is just so potent, especially for those heroes that are starved for power. You get this out on turn 1, you already have quite the advantage. The fact it's a wildcard resource plays into so many abilities. Can alleviate a cost on like an obligation or something that's been attached to you, or getting rid of a pesky attachment on a villain. It is significant. I don't think it's busted. I think it's a very fair trade once per turn to be able to exhaust it, take a damage, generate a resource. I can't, it's just amazing. Again, the only downside is it's limited to leadership. No, very, very, very interesting. I look forward to playing with this card with more heroes. Like I think Cyclops could generally benefit from it, putting him in leadership, but then having access to all the allies that are out there for X-Men. I think that when Rogue and Gambit come out, you're going to have so many options. I think Cyclops is going to probably climb to really top tier when he has a lot more options when it comes to having X-Men. But yeah, for right now, it takes already potent heroes and just pushes them to 11. So there we have best card for 2022, Clarity of Purpose. For our best hero of 2022, I think this one might be a little controversial. First up, for a runner-up, we have Shadowcat. I was very impressed. So usually the characters that you get, or the heroes that you get in the main boxes, are not as potent as some of the ones that come out later. But Shadowcat really surprised me with how powerful and versatile she can be. Her ability to, she's a form, and this may be surprising too, because as I've said before on this channel, I'm not a fan generally of form changers, and that's exactly what she is between her phase and her solid side. She's got the preferred stat line, the 2-2-2, hand size of 5, which is pretty standard, but her selective intangibility. While you're in phased form, Shadowcat ignores guard and patrol keywords and any crisis icons in play. Okay, that's fine, but when I played her, it really didn't come into play that much. I can see this as being more important of a multiplayer thing rather than a single player. But it's her phase shifting that is so potent. In some ways, the forced phase shifting on her intangible side, where if she defends, she then has to switch over to solid, is not that big of a detriment. Because it allows for a lot of combos for her various cards. Cards like Powerful Punch and Protection were made, I think, specifically for her, although she is extremely good in aggression. The speed with which she can flip back and forth between forms and completely ignore damage. That's the thing. It's like Vision, who can ignore damage, but there's a downside to it. I don't really think there's a downside to her ever being able to ignore one attack on her turn. It takes some getting used to make sure she's in the form that you want her to be in, but wow, she is a extremely potent character. And even her basic, like, significant thwart abilities and damage abilities are really good and work both in phased and in solid forms. She is a real powerhouse and a real shocker for me when she was released in the box set, because usually they tend to be a little weak. But Shadowcat was my runner-up best hero of 2022. But our best hero, and I'm sure this is going to be controversial, Spider-Ham. So I know I've seen how much dislike there was for him. The claims that, oh, he's a cartoon character. Yeah, that's fine. They're all cartoon characters. None of them are real. So, I mean, again, he doesn't have that great of a stat line. But the power for him comes from the toon counters. A recovery of 5 on his alter ego with hit points of 12. Being able, when he makes a basic recovery, you add a toon counter. Each toon counter on Spider-Ham can be spent as a wildcard resource. And after Spider-Man takes any amount of damage, place 1 toon counter on him. And especially when there's cards that allow you to basically shrug off any of that damage that you take, he's a cartoon character. There's lots of fun text on the cards, you know. Stick out your tongue at the villain, or, yeah, I mean, you don't have to do these things, or talk out loud. They introduced a little bit of fun into this in a way that a lot of cards haven't. I want to say interactivity, but he's a silly character. But what surprised me is exactly how powerful he is. Those toon counters are unbelievable. Plus his main deck his ability to just completely ignore damage if he gets overwhelmed, be able to shake it off and come back for more. The amount of resources he has, wildcard resources especially, he fits very well into leadership. And of course, he's a web warrior, and he has such a great selection of web warrior allies and cards available to him. He is a real powerhouse, if not one of the most powerful characters in the game. I'm not going to say he's as busted as, say, Doctor Strange, but he really is up there. He has been an amazing character. And he's one of those that you hesitate to reach for to take on a villain because you know that you're already in a good position to beat that scenario and that villain just off of the innate strengths of his abilities and of his core deck. He is fantastic. You know, just go back and watch my Spider-Ham play against Ronan. That was the real test to see, and Ronan to this day remains the most difficult villain. I mean, there are tough ones out there now, but he is still the penultimate, or the ultimate hill to climb when it comes to defeating them. And while I won't say that Spider-Ham did it easily, if I were to take Spider-Ham against him again, more than likely I would be able to win. Anything that he basically is able to completely ignore fanaticism. And there are very few heroes in the game that can do that. So I think against, lesser villains, he would have a much easier time. But again, Spider-Ham, extremely fun for a counter-based character. But also extraordinarily potent. So Spider-Ham, cartoon character though he may be, best hero of 2022. So what we can't forget for our best of 2022 is, of course, our scenarios. You really can't have a game without the villains, and I know I haven't really mentioned that much, but I think there are two scenarios that really stood out in 2022, and they came later in the year. So for our runner-up is going to be Spiral. Now, overall, I really enjoyed the Mojo Mania scenario pack as a little mini campaign. Haven't played it that way, turns out, but I did play it as individual scenarios. And out of the three, I really did enjoy Spiral. I think I liked Spiral for the same reasons why I liked Hela from last year. It felt like it was an actual quest or a story. Or progression beyond just, okay, we've foiled, or we haven't been able to foil the villain's plan, so now his plan just gets more planier. He just does more. Oh no, we couldn't stop him from making sentinels or more goblin minions. Oh, there's just going to be more goblin minions. So for Spiral, I found that the idea behind this one, where she would spend some time, a lot of time being escaped and you can't hurt her, and you're searching for her through the various and randomly included genres from the modular sets, made for quite a bit of fun. It's very tense when you're searching for her as playing solo, and there are 4 cards in the environment deck, and you're trying to search for Spiral. You really better hope that you do find the cornered one. But of course, once she gets cornered, she comes out swinging, and you have to be prepared for that hit. So it's a lot like Risky Business that way for Green Goblin, where you have to be very, very careful about your timing when you flip her over to the side where she can be hurt. So there's a lot to think about in this one beyond just, I'm keeping threat down, I'm trying to maximize my damage and minimize the damage to me and see if I can build my engine and so on. On this one, it really does feel like a chase, and you have to be very aware of, if you're going to corner her, are you ready for that? Because she can hit you back very, very hard. And the genres themselves are very fun. I think that whole pack was a real success. But Spiral is, she is difficult. That whole pack, I think, is quite difficult to play. But nothing feels better that when you do corner her and you have all the answers to deal with the hit back that she's going to hit you with. So it was very fun, very thematic. But I think for our winning scenario, and it really should be this way, I think for all villains in Marvel Champions, you're always going to have the ultimate villain for a given set, and this year I think it should go to Magneto. It's a culmination of the overall storyline about him getting control of Master Mold and making all these M-type Sentinels. He's retreated to Asteroid M to basically try and win. But the one thing that really, I think, exemplified this one for me was the game encourages, or the scenario encourages you to push through all the side scenarios. For like he is a potent opponent. He should be. He's an Omega level mutant. He's extremely dangerous. But you have ways to mitigate it. So one complaint that I had about Mutant Genesis overall, there's way too much tough, there's way too much steady and stalwart. Like the game seems to have been overtuned in that sense. I'm not entirely sure why. If I recall, I think that Mutant Genesis was earlier in the development cycle, sometime after or around Mad Titans Gambit, which is extremely, or even Guardians. I don't know. Don't call me that. If you know, let me know. But it does seem like earlier development where the villains in general are tougher. So, for example, Mansion Attack, I was really looking forward to that one. I like the idea of like having random members of the Brotherhood jump out at you, but the too random when it comes to the locations you're trying to defend and far too limited, with a real detriment if you get the ones that are bad for you. That one was not as fun as I thought, a battle through the mansion. However, this one, and I think I would like to see more scenarios that do this and more encounter sets that do this, that give you some element of a reward as you push through the game. So the better you're doing against Magneto or whatever villain, the rewards you get. And this one really does push you to fight through orbital decay, to push through the side schemes, to make it a real benefit and make it easier for you if you're making sure that Master Mold has been sabotaged, and you get to the point where you've defeated most of his schemes. Asteroid M is falling out of orbit, and then he's got physical strain and he loses steady permanently, because this is, it actually feels like as a hero, you're pushing against the villain's agenda in a way that is just not, I have to mitigate what he's doing. I got to keep the threat down. I got to keep him from hitting me. It actually puts a burden on the villain in a way that we really haven't seen previously. He's got a very great, extensive and varied encounter set. He can do a lot of different things. It makes him feel versatile and different in terms of he can burst you down if you're not careful. So you have to be prepared. But I think that this was a real winner in terms of your final showdown against a significant villain. It isn't automatically he's so overwhelmingly powerful in that Thanos or Ronin sort of way, or Venom Goblin sort of way. He is tough, but the game gives you a path to being able to defeat him effectively. So in my opinion, Magneto not only was the best scenario or villain for 2022, I think it's a pattern that this game should follow in the future. So there we have it. Those are our best ofs for 2022. Please let me know in the comments if you agree, if you want to highlight some other spectacular cards or combos or heroes or scenarios, or even just say how your 2022 Marvel Champions experience has gone. I'm very much looking forward to 2023. I think the game just gets better and better from here. Thanks to all who have watched, and again, happy gaming. Thank you so much for watching Longship Gaming. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It will really help the channel to grow and improve. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when more Longship gaming content goes live. Until next time, happy gaming.